expected to make it. So
Logical Raptors fanatic.
shoot trying to miss. Like every shot
Logical Raptors fanatic.
try to make it. So I was gonna act surprised.
A fun guy. Obviously,
Logical Raptors fanatic.
love the game of basketball. I mean, it's just more questions you have to ask me in order for me to tell you about.
Logical Raptors fanatic.
I just can't give you a whole spiel. I don't even know where you're sitting at.
No
Project Truth.
has contacted me, and I see all the stuff that, like, you guys see. I dream like they dream. Yeah. Yeah, I want,
Logical Raptors fanatic.
you know. Yeah, so they keep dreaming. I dream too.
Salute, real ones. Project Truth always. Mike back here with Logical Raptors fanatic. And this is what we've been working towards over the last month or so. And we're going to see how all that kind of stat information we looked at each year really closely, looked at the stats. But now it's kind of time to kind of zoom out and look at the big picture more, right? We have grasp of most of the context, right? And now it's time to really zoom out with all the context and try to give a more, it's not fully contextualized because of the stats available, and I'm going to get into that more, and this is going to be a great finale. Let's dive deeper. Enjoy.
4 or 5 years. Yeah, how long, man? Even since Philly, man. It's crazy. You good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Welcome,
Everything
man.
was smooth.
Everything was good?
Yeah,
good.
Smooth came in and handled all my paperwork and stuff. So all that's good.
Bringing in a player like Thaddeus Young, we wanted a veteran type player, a bird rights type player that came and bridged, helping our young guys both in the locker room and on the court. An athlete that can still play, still does the things that I think are very important to how we play and our organization. And the leadership of the court I think is significant because Thaddeus brings so much energy, good spirit. I think he'll help the young players. I've known him for a long time, and I'm happy that we finally got him here. We looked at different scenarios, but you guys know I'm not too big on the trade deadline. To me, overall planning and how you build a team is done in the summer training camp, all the things you want to work in our way to build a team that's sustainable and that can win.
So, obviously, as we build the context of Thad, we understand what Masai's talking about more and more. And we're trying to key in on the things he additionally says about our team and what he offers. And we're trying to prove that out right now. But now we're going to go into some of the more advanced stuff. Mold results. I'll explain this for a second here. Mold, Thad is the second forward beta 1 version. That's what that means. So second forward beta 1 version. That means like he's missing pieces, and beta is like almost to alpha, and then official release is kind of like what it's supposed to be, right? And we'll go into that a little bit more in the end when I kind of tie in what he actually has to offer in a sense to each player, a little snippet, because he has a lot to offer to everyone on the team. That's overstated, I think, but the guys that really you're going to see key value in the future because of their long-term plan with us, I'm going to talk a little bit more about those pieces. But back to the video though. Observant people of that clip could see Eric Curry kind of being the guy that Thad met when he came here to kind of like get his introduction. Eric Curry was the kind of the meet and greet guy, talk to the the vets coming in or pros coming in or whoever coming in to kind of work out with the team or try out or whatever. He's kind of like the liaison, and he was talking about getting Thad a room at Hotel X and stuff, and he was showing him around a bit. But he has familiarity with the bigger organization. But what we're going into today, and that's why I kind of want to left that clip in there. This is actually what Eric Curry used to do. He used to program the models of like the computer programs to understand basketball. So the computers can only do what you tell them, and to program them to understand basketball, that takes someone that understands basketball and programming and how you're weighing each evaluation and determining which play set each play is. We're going to go into it. So let's get into the first slide. It's going to be a little bit crazy at first, but hold on. We'll go through it all, I promise. All right, so finally, after the pre-finale of talking about it, we have a semi-full sheet here because there's another sheet after this with a whole other set of different things here too. But we'll start off with the title, I guess, and then work our way down top to bottom, right? So, Thad Young's skills, basic player slash mentor, and then the mold code, the second forward, like forward one is your premium forward, forward two is your secondary forward. So he's a secondary forward, beta one. He's missing a couple things, like we said. All right. So rebounding. And everything's based on this timeline. So some stats I there's less to take from. We saw that every year his rebounding numbers were pretty consistent, offensive, defensive. Some years got really high, but I gave it kind of this color green because obviously this color would take like closer to 10 rebound average for a long time, right? Well, at least for a full season, have that up near 10 or higher, right? That's where the forward position. But rebounding is weird. It's based on coaching scheme and where he likes to position you. If you're positioned to get rebounds and not be back in transition because you're a better defender and can stop people in transition, there's different game plans. So this is where the advanced statistics kind of come in more. Like that base stat line, the one we kind of been looking at, not the advanced stuff. So just the basic, that's just results. So we're brewing down the most basic, cutting it to the basic of results, right? And the results determine winning and losing in a sense, right? But ultimately, to understand certain stats, you need the additional context of other stats because understanding rebounding stats aren't made in the same way. If stats can be made in different ways, adding the context of which situation is which is the only way to actually know the true actual breakdown of it, right? So basing things off basic stat sheets where people like to crown certain numbers and not have the context behind them, I'm going to go into some of that a little bit and show what the stats that we read for a month, what they show and what they don't show. And this is kind of putting on your logical goggles, and we're going to look with my kind of logical vision and what can be determined from the numbers and my understanding of the statistics on all the stats we read. And this is the evaluation, right? So rebounding, obviously there's a lot of different numbers and different things that go into rebounding, whether he's even in position when the rebound comes, because that's the whole part. You can be in position, but if the rebound goes another way, that's a whole different thing in a sense. So how can that be discounted against you when you had no ability to actually get the rebound, right? So there are different roles when the process of rebounding is happening, and evaluating when Thad is doing a good box out that gets another guy a rebound and stuff. All that stuff does need to be weighed in. So the actual number of his actual rebounds doesn't actually completely say everything about his rebounding. So we don't know how good he is at boxing out, how good he is at kind of holding his position in the rebounding zone, right? We can tell that he can do his part there, but ultimately how he does it, we don't have a determination on that, right? So I just want to keep it very simple and give you a kind of green line. We saw the consistency. We saw every year it's pretty much the same kind of dealio, right? No need, I don't think we can really glean too much off of that, but we know 15 years of rebounding, this guy has a bunch of tips and tricks and whole bunch of different IQ and body positioning and when to box and when to kind of go over a guy and do different things, right? He has that because he's been playing for so long. So we'll just hold that right there and go on to the next thing, right? Because development and of the player who you are is like a web. It's always been a web. The develop machine's a web. Everything about a player is like a web. And you're trying to capture those golden nuggets of knowledge in the web. And the more bigger the web is, the more you capture, right? So let's continue on. Pro mindset. I gave him kind of like a gold kind of championship level on this. He played like you're gonna see with the games and stuff, but hard hat mentality. Like this guy, obviously playing a tough position at power forward, still played all the games. So obviously he's playing bruised and hurt and stuff like that. And the consistency in his role and position, and based on each, like when the team's morphing, he morphs with it and he finds consistency again and gives that consistency. That's a hard hat mentality, like a guy that just comes to work, knows what he offers and gives it to the team. And team first, playing through injuries, playing when your numbers are going to look funny, that stuff doesn't matter. Ultimately, what matters to this type of guy, what you build as a sportsman, what Masai was saying, like you build as a sportsman over time, that has it. It. He's a like a solid pillar. This is one of the pillars. And he is like a golden pillar in this aspect of team first and like hard hat mentality. Come to work every day, put that work in off the court, on the court, take care of your body, do all this kind of stuff, right? And he's been doing it for so long, 15 years. He has a lot of stuff that he can really give to our guys, right? So, and I think just the consistency of numbers, trends, and stuff, right? This is where you can extrapolate this type of information off what you've seen of his results, right? We can understand that his numbers fluctuate based on playing to what the team needs. This guy can do a whole bunch of array of different things, but he's always kind of played within the team. And you're going to see like 9 out of the 15 years, he went to the playoffs. So it was winning basketball literally a lot more time. We're going to go through a little bit of that when we touch on the playoff part, but you can see that he's been part of winning and he's always rolled himself into the winning aspect of the team and knowing where his role is and playing to it, right? And that I think that's really key for everyone trying to figure out roles right now. A guy that's kind of had so many roles, so many different teams over so much time. He has the kind of knowledge to help different role types kind of get into certain mentalities and help them find their place on the team. And that's what leaders do. They help follow guys and help them progress and anchor themselves on the team, right? So let's continue on. Defense, effort, and effects. We went over it in the pre finale. This is kind of the two stats that I previewed out of all the ones I'm going to show today. But his defense and his efforts and effects have always been the cornerstone of what Thad has been on the court. He's been a defensive guy, pesky defender. That's what Masai said, right? So like that's always been we've seen it. We've seen it. But defense is a weird thing to evaluate. Like steals and like blocks and turnovers and thinking that really encompasses what defense is. Defense is can only be compared against offense because what is the what is the goal of defense? To stop offense. So you have to rate the offense before you can rate what kind of defense it is. So understanding that leaves a lot of context off the table when you're looking at kind of defensive ratings and all this stuff. It doesn't weigh into roles, team defending strategies, all kinds of stuff is missed in kind of defensive stats. That's why I don't like to really harp on them a lot. Obviously, steals and blocks, you can see that's a definable kind of happening in a sense of where you take the ball from the other team and it becomes your possession. So that's like it's interesting of the definition of that stat. That's what it just marks how many of times you have taken the ball from the other team and like kept possession or whatever, right? Turnovers is the opposite. How many times have you given the ball, like let the other team steal the ball? But turnovers are also missed dribbles. There's so much in each stat. Like you have to understand how many ways you can get a steal, right? And what it takes to get a steal from a team, right? There's going to be other defenders in the picture that have roles in your stealing the ball, right? Most of the time, some of the time, it depends. You need to understand those situations to understand defense. And like I said before, you can watch the game, but if you understand what you're watching, the stats should reflect what you think, right? If you understand what you're watching from a like okay, I'm gonna go into something, but hopefully it'll be a quick one, right? Okay, so there's a massive misconception among basketball fans thinking athleticism is kind of what you look for and is the be all end all, and you need to tank to get those guys, right? They're missing that no matter how athletic you are, you need IQ to understand how to use that athleticism. So IQ will always be the key to everything. Because you can be the most athletic person in the world. If you don't know how to use it, then what kind of effects are you having with your athleticism, your freak athleticism? We've seen freak athletes that can't play basketball because they can't play the fundamental parts of the game. IQ and the fundamentals with athleticism is how you get these great players like Jordan, Kobe, that understand that it's both. It's both athleticism and IQ that make you great. And so when we pick these athletic freaks and stuff, we need to have patience when teaching them the IQ fundamental forms of pro basketball. That's what we're doing with the mold system. We take a guy, we study him, we take our own guys and study them to the nth degree, and we come out with game plans, like we have everyone captured on motion camera. If we think someone needs to add something from their game, oh, bring up Gasol inside passing game, and have a guy that worked with Gasol, that was there on the staff, that worked with him on that stuff, or a guy that's familiar with the same stuff, book an hour of video time with the player, and they're going to be watching nothing but Gasol body rhythm camera stuff and different things like that. And then they're going to go out onto the court and they're going to try to work some of it, see how it looks, see how it feels, tweak it a bit maybe, but get the layout of what it looks like. And the results should come based on form and fundamentals. That's what we're teaching these guys. So form and fundamentals with the freak athleticism and IQ on top makes championship players. And this mold system is in part teaching them what to do with that athleticism. And most teams can get an athletic freak if they don't know what to teach him and how to kind of help him grow at his game to be the most effective it can be from his athleticness, like they have with Pascal and other players on this team and other players in the past. That's what Masai is great at. He sees a guy and he sees the things that maybe he can do, and then we start putting that into action and making it happen. Don't just wait for things to happen. Let's actually look to make a positive result by preparation and hard work. And that's what I think people miss. They think it's just about the athletic freaks, but it's about the hard work, IQ, fundamental work. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into it. And if those athletic freaks weren't so reliant on their kind of athletic freakdom and learned that stuff earlier, because IQ things last a lifetime. Using athletic skills lasts till your athletic ability is gone. And you need to understand, we as basketball fans need to understand the IQ part of the game more, and really hone in on these players that deserve that kind of praise for being smart, efficient players, that are the ones that really are teaching these athletic freaks to become great in the end, in a sense of team mentors and stuff. And that's what we're talking about here today. We're trying to equate what that has to offer to our young guys, our young athletic freaks like Precious, Scotty, and the right stuff matters. IQ, building the game off IQ with athletic freakdom. Woo! That's how you get like Giannis and all these freaking all-time great freak players, like guys that kind of have the IQ and the athleticism. That's what Jordan was. He was the hard work, the IQ, and focusing on the right stuff. So let's continue to focus on the right stuff. And I just want to lay that out there because I think a lot of people prize athleticism over IQ because they don't really understand that part, but it's there and it's more important than the athleticism when building championship players. If you have an athletic freak that makes mistakes, aka Russell Westbrook, I won't call him Brick, Westbrook, but he's the prime example of it. a guy that never cared about the IQ stuff and just rode athletic ability and never cared. And look what's happening. He's been exposed. And those players will get exposed in time. Your favorites that you think are the next whoever, but they don't have the IQ part of the game. And you're unable to see that, gets you into these modes where, oh, that guy's bust, or you're trying to find reasons to explain theories without understanding the game itself. It's quite a mess. Project Truth is trying to cut through it a little bit and try to focus on the things that matter and what the things that matter say. So let's continue on with that stuff because I think the mold system is really key, is very key in what we're doing. It's a combination of drafting athletic freaks and teaching them the skills and the IQ and building out their games based on the fundamentals and not relying on solely on their athleticism. So back on topic now, just a little rant, sorry guys, but I think I needed to kind of get that out there. So let's continue on. Interesting, we kind of glanced at his passing stuff, so we'll kind of dive a little bit deeper and kind of compare the years a little bit more here. So obviously rookie year, first couple years, obviously understood what happened. Kind of started figuring it out in the fourth year a bit more. And then in the fifth year, we started to see a positive, but then they went into full tank mode. And he still had what he had in the passing department, so he continued. Then he got traded to the Wolves. And the Flip Saunders was really good, teaching him a couple things and different things like maybe seeing what Thad could really do if properly trained up, and maybe Thad was the only guy that really could understand what he was trying to lay down, and whatever the case may be, Thad really gained a lot of mentorship and probably experience in that year. But then adapting it to the net system the first year didn't really go well. Well, he only had a couple games. This was his first kind of short stint on a team and then going into the playoffs immediately, right? So this was kind of the same kind of we saw. It was similar to what happened with the Raptors where we got him at trade deadline, right? And he had like what 10, 20 games to kind of get acclimated. After being with the same team for 7 years, he starts kind of really having to adapt on the fly and start really changing his game, right? So, year nine, he kind of adapted to their system a bit, but maybe the coach or the way he wasn't being played properly in a sense, but maybe these kind of maybe the coach was pushing him to pass in a different way and he's learning up a different set, whereas athleticism is kind of waning a bit and he's learning how to pass in different positions because athleticism, see, passing is about shot creation. That's what you're trying to do by passing. You're trying to create a shot. And athleticism, you can get your defender out of position with speed, but ultimately the pass depends on IQ and seeing vision and seeing where the other defenders are and where passes can get picked off. And there's a whole bunch of different things that entail passing. But see, that's where maybe he was being used in a different scenario. But we've seen ultimately he has a bit of perimeter playmaking, but we have better ones. So we use Spicy and Scotty's exceptional at perimeter playmaking, but Thad is really great interiorly. And maybe this is where he kind of learned that a bit more. Who knows? That's where I can only take off the stats what I have and haven't watched the player year by year like I do the Raptors in a sense. So I know the Raptors inside out. I don't know Thad as much as the Raptors. I'm a Raptors fanatic. I wasn't a Philly fanatic or a Nets fanatic or, or whatever teams these were, right? So I don't have a full grasp, but I'm trying to kind of add context to someone, like use the stats to add context to a player properly and try to build out that image based on understanding the player he is now and seeing kind of the results and working backwards and seeing kind of how he built up to this point right here where we know he is at now, right? So we could see remnants of, we can't determine where this was or what happened here. That's why asking questions of the player when they're inside the organization and talking to our development staff and really explaining different scenarios in his whole passing kind of lifetime with the league defines these different things. And we understand what breakthrough happened here that created good years in Indiana and then eventually led to um, great years in Chicago after it was fully defined out. So we would probably really want to know what happened in this snapshot as well. So the progression from green, so playable, capable, winning, but to championship level, this progression here really matters to us in a sense of trying to figure out how he got to here, right? From here, look at this. From here to here, look at this. Solid green, decent green, gold, green. So we can see that he has the IQ of the forward passing position, and we've seen it. We seen it in that last playoff game when he went full out. They're probably like, all right, let's test, see what he can do fully. Let him go out and let's determine whether we want to like re-sign him and for how much and kind of stuff. And what he showed with Boucher, yeah, okay, we're re-signing him. We're pushing that button, right? And understanding that his role is different from Otto, that's why he makes like 2 million more. Thad makes 2 million more and is 6 years older and 35 years old, and he makes more money than Otto. It's because of his leadership and all these other stuff. Leadership gets paid, and that's what tells me what his role is on this team. He's supposed to be here as a leader, a step-in guy that can kind of come in and help stabilize, but also the main factor is he's contributing to the mold build. And I think passing is really key, like his interior passing. Like we can't tell what kind of passing from just his bare passing numbers, and that's where I'm going to translate that part. And that's where more advanced statistics would completely define that context out, where I'm making a judgment call where the Raptors know exactly dead to rights what every pass he made was to and what kind of play set, what kind of screen he got, when it was screen assisted, when it was on a pick and roll, when it was in the interior, when it was on the perimeter. They map all this stuff out. They completely map everything out, right? So this is just basic, like basic player mentor. That's why I call it basic. It's not the complete picture, but we can take away from his results that he did something in these years to improve those results, right? So that's what we're looking at right now. His bare results and how they looked over time and instances where he got better, right? In the development skills, like I charted the development skills. Well, defense, there's elements that can be, but I said efforts and effects, those are usually predetermined based on body size, coverage capability, what kind of things are you able to stop, and what kind of degree are you able to stop them at, depending on the attacking player or the offense. It's all based on offense and what the offense can do and whether you can stop that or not, and positioning you in a system where you can be on the players that you could stop and be less on the players that you can't. And that's how it works. So, but we're trying to build versatile defenders that don't really have those places where they can't be effective. They're effective on all positions, all switch outs. And that's what this kind of like Project 6-9 defense thing is supposed to be. We want a point where we can field a whole lineup of 6-9 guys and positionless. They can switch among positions and it be this like interchangeable kind of crazy mess in a sense for the other team to try to understand of who to guard and what to guard and a whole bunch of different things. But the process right now, we're trying to teach guard skills to forwards. And Spicy is the biggest kind of big time model of that, where we kind of were able to convert guard skills onto him. And now he is able to kind of offensively play the guard position and guard guards and guard all that kind of stuff. So he becomes almost like this the real vision of positionless players in a sense of what we want ultimately. Like we want five whatever, three Pascals and two OGs or something like that. Some combination, some freak combination of that kind of something on the court would be dangerous. And I think, see, this is where teaching skills to forwards, we need forward blueprints of IQ skills because forward's a really weird position and it's based a lot about athleticism and size. But if you can boil down to the IQ stuff and really learn the passing game from an IQ standpoint and really understand different things about it, it can enhance your ability to be better than your opponents, right? That's what it's always been about. Be better than your opponents. Be more versatile, be more prepared than your opponents, and you'll win, right? And that's the kind of vision. So let's continue on to his 3-pointers. So now let's look at his 3-point shooting results. Obviously, volume matters, and we'll look at how well he did on that volume, right? That's the basic formula of weighing down 3 points. And 3-point shooting is actually the most straightforward statistic here. The shots on the other side of the 3-point line, but also has context of whether those shots are being made for you or off the dribble. There's so many scenarios, even how a 3-point shot is made, right? So you need the context of that. But this is just the pure results. You need your eye to kind of determine what kind of shots they are, right? But we can go over kind of a bit of what Thad did here. There's not too much to glean, right? We saw in his rookie year wasn't really there. This is interesting. Like compared to his 2-pointers, there's a interesting tandem result between when he gets used to the inside attacking, he kind of the three ball goes non-existent, and he gets see how this works kind of. So first year, right? Rookie year, not too many shots. So like basically just a couple runners and stuff. Second year, he's asked to do more, right? So he's continuing the three ball and doing okay in the 2-pointers, right? Then his third year, right? And the passing's still not. He can't pass out of double teams and stuff. So if he's trapped, he's screwed at this point in a sense. So getting getting trapped in the 2-point line is not where he can play. So he's seeing kind of there's a detriment. So he can drive as much as he wants, but if they trap him, he's having issues passing out of that trap. So his 3-pointer is being more relied on at this point because he can't go into the paint and be effective. So we see that. And then teams finally shift and study him and figure him out. And in this third year, unfortunately, was when they were trying to figure out what he was. And in third year, like, man, being so young and stuff, that's where Philly did him wrong in a sense, in my mind. Playing him against starters and then testing him just off that didn't give him a fair enough analysis, right? So he learned there was a problem in his game, but then his role shifted also. So interesting enough, his shots went down, right? We saw that. And his 2-pointers became better than they have ever based on volume. So he's now a 2-pointer guy. They're trapping him and stuff, and he's learning to pass out of it more. So he wants to be as effective as he can be, and he's probably being asked to stay in the post now. So we'll see that happen for these next 2 years. And the 5th year is actually when the only time Thad ever saw the second round was year 5. And this was his role. Inside, nah. Assists started coming up. This was the first positive year. So he's starting to like become like a post guy, right? Playmaking out of the post. Playing probably primarily in the post, right? So then we go on to the first year of the Philly process, and he gets a lot more shots. But based on volume and being a primary guy, 535 is decent. He's probably getting triple trapped now and all this kind of crazy stuff. And he's still making assists, no 3-pointers. So we can see what kind of role he played these years, right? We can understand how he was effective and continued to get his minutes. It was based on he anchored himself on the 2-pointers, and even 2-pointers, I guess we'll go into because they're so similar. Volume, 2-pointer average. 2-pointers is even more completely misunderstood than 3 because of the mid-range versus right up next to the basket. We need to know when those shots, and we can't tell the balance of those shots from these statistics, but based on the average, we can kind of see that he was a little bit in the mid-range and stuff and doing that stuff because slashing and stuff, usually you see higher marks, right? But also his body size. See, he's not an actual center. See, centers usually have ridiculous 2-pointer averages because they only usually do inside work, right? And that's the highest percentage shots available. And they're the easiest to make in a sense from distance. So we got to understand as you move farther away from the basket, percentages start to lower. And you can tell where a 3-point average is different based on the distance of shot, right? And that's where the tandem, and we need to quantify how many 2s and how many 3s are being shot to really understand the total field goal percentage. And people like to march that out and say, oh, look at this, look at that. But you have to get into the context of volume and a whole bunch of other aspects that aren't even touched on the basic stat sheet, right? Like how the 2-pointers are created. Like there's just so many factors of how 2-pointers are created and 3-pointers are created and how they're actually shot or when they're shot or like what conditions the player needs to make sure all this stuff happens on the court to get a shot to be as accurate in certain scenarios. And defining that is really interesting to understand like what a player truly is. And the Raptors have like a million stats feeding into these numbers and can look at a line like this and have true context and have filter demands like let's see him on pick and roll plays, zone plays, all this type of different against different defenses and what kind of attacking plays they were running. Were they running read and react, or was it like a set play? Like there's a lot of different factors of when your shots are being made or being created, and understanding those aspects can really define out how good a player is and where they're good at. And then you can see those points, and if you can define the results, you can look at the method and really know what's truly elite and what's not. And the Raptors metrics and their hidden programs and what Eric Curry was programming is secret, because this is what they base a lot of stuff on. And people trying to mock coach a bit, oh, look at his field goal average, and saying he doesn't fit, when they don't understand the context behind that number and how much context there actually is, and understanding that probably the only people that know the actual full context of all this stuff are like GMs and the people that have the highest quality analyzation software and have the payroll to pay guys to track such minuscule things like play sets and all this kind of stuff for a million different players, and have this at a fingertip to kind of look at and compare when judging players and understanding where they fit and where they don't fit, and understanding what we need and what we don't need, right? There's a lot of different things that compare into this. They like to evaluate everything at the end of the year. The playoffs is kind of like the exam, and we kind of weigh everything based on previous results and what has worked. So if this method was able to predict this thing before, we're going to look at it more and understand why it was able to predict it, and then maybe scale that out to other things and maybe see if that works and base results off results. So we need to be mindful of that. So let's continue on, though. We were left off at the first tank year, or the first process year. Second process year, he was literally the main banana, and we could see he was out of role as the top guy, and we could see exactly he was getting pushed off the line, triple trapped, and the only thing he could really still do is create out of those scenarios. And we're seeing kind of like when you push a guy up against the hardest wall, we see what shakes out in a sense, and his playmaking is elite because he was going up against the best defenders of every team every night at this year. And yes, his shooting wasn't spectacular, but his playmaking was, and his assisting was. So let's continue on. First year, well, half a year in Minnesota, right? So he got better playmaking, but Flip didn't understand, or the position he was in, he wasn't able to they didn't have another playmaker that could make 3-pointers for him, I guess. So that went off a cliff, but that happens when you switch teams and stuff. Like, things don't immediately meld and fit, right? You have to kind of work them into whatever, and maybe they don't ever fit. And some players don't fit on teams, but Brooklyn saw a player that fit their team, maybe, and brought him over, and we could see that his 3-pointers and his 2-pointers improved that year, but his playmaking went down because they were using him differently, probably as a finisher more, and this was escape passes only. And there wasn't really a system maybe in place to escape pass to. The Raptors are really good because they know where most guys are supposed to be based on the system they run. And so if they pass it in a certain place, a guy should be there in a sense. And maybe the Nets did, or he didn't understand that part yet, or the Nets didn't really have that part really cemented with a lot of player movement. Like Garnett was out going, and this is when they kind of realized the Billy King thing was a big mistake, and kind of were flipping into the young Nets that we saw and swept in the bubble, right? The end result, we talked about it, right? So let's continue on. So his second year, obviously they found where he's effective and he was able to get rolled in nice, and his 2-pointers really improved. I think this is the point where he didn't like how, or he learned a lot of things from making mistakes these years and really turned the juice on with his footwork and his off-season preparation, and came back, and you could see he never touches blue again. So obviously in these years he did something, and he's always been fairly solid from two-pointers, but now we could see when he's in this point right here, the way he plays inside is kind of beautiful. It's like this perfect, well, not perfect. No player's perfect IQ wise, but a lot of the plays he does are perfectly executed in a sense of fundamental theory wise, and he boxes out or his position or like the way he plays around the basket is really effective in my mind from watching him, right? So let's continue to see how that compares out. So obviously, if he's better in the post, they're not gonna ask him to take threes, but that takes away from his three development. So it's always key to kind of be utilizing both early to really define skills out and have these skills for when you're in your prime and stuff, right? So like see, this is where we kind of wanted him at in a sense of what like volume, but 308's not, that's not the volume you want to have at that, right? So it got a blue at that volume, and then he never really shot that volume until Chicago. So let's continue on into the next couple of years. So first year Indiana, they kind of he was rolled in, I think, the most perfect in his years, and obviously hitting his prime. So you can see nice green, really balanced attack, really utilized. This was when they had Paul George and they were actually contending, but it started sputtering out a little bit. The players they had were starting to create issue or whatever, you know what I mean. So we go on to the second year, where his three ball dropped a bit with a little bit more volume. So they tried to increase his three ball a little bit after seeing the high clip, but it didn't really pan out as much this year. Or scheme wise, they were attacking different aspects of his game, and we could see how it looks like he was rolled up again. So he's rolled up again, thinking off this year they could roll him up, right? And they tried it, and it just didn't work. They traded Paul George, and so the next year is actually the Oladipo and Sabonis year, their first year on the team. Young Miles Turner was in here in these 2 years, so they're the main kind of three pieces they're trying to build around at this point. So these 2 years are kind of with Paul George, and we could see kind of what happened in a sense. And then this is when Thad is in like vet mode first, like banana sense, but with like younger guys, and we could see his playmaking, reading and creating for more talented, kind of more athletic guys. He does have an ability there, and this is kind of his next role shift, where this is what the role kind of Chicago saw him in, like a bench guy, but he was showing good stuff, right? They made it to the playoffs, even though there was like a young first version of this team. And Thad was a part of that, a really big part of it, in a sense of what he provided. And we're going to continue on, obviously. Chicago was an interesting role. It was like more of he's fully benched now, a bench vet. And I rated that based on the bench vet kind of stuff. And it looks decent from a bench guy, right? Doing his role, teaching, probably doing a lot of that stuff too. Three balls there a bit. But then next year, obviously, he locks into the way that the team runs on the inside and becomes elite effective in the shots he can do in the two-pointer range. So then the three comes off, and he's elite at the playmaking inside again. So now he hits a double gold in a sense of being able efficiency. So a bench player, 9.1 shots, and having close to 600 and passing out of traps, and these two skills are elite. He's made them elite with the IQ because he's not athletic anymore. These are years he's waned. So these things are the IQ, the foundation of what he built over the first couple years. Like we said in the kind of the house kind of scenario where they have a plot of land and you want to build stable structures. This is what he built after the wave hit, right? And it looks decent. It looks decent, like for where he came from and his journey. Getting to this point of these two skills really deserves respect. This is more of a bench kind of cut ratio, but but it's the efficiency, right? I think we want to try to find out what's the match between these two things. His inside, like IQ game, the way he manipulates defenders and uses his body to kind of create shots closer to the rim, and then his playmaking when those options are taken away and he's coming out of those scenarios, because those are situations our young guys are gonna be in a ton. And 14 years of knowledge of getting to this point could really help Scotty, Precious, Koloko. We're going to go into it. But these, I think, are the two main really big skills: interior passing and the really interior scoring, right? So 0 to 10 feet kind of range. He's really elite in those aspects. So we'll continue to look for for the shot comparison. Yeah, like it's going a bit weird because he wasn't really played, but his efficiency obviously in the shots he took was high. We got to understand minutes played because I have all this stuff kind of charted out onto one page in a sense to kind of show a lot more context, but at the moment trying to make small connections between his 2 and his 3. We can see how when he turns on his 2 game, they shut off his 3 ball. But then he kind of hits his vet status with us, orange. Yeah, like I said, orange. You could see the efficiencies are high, but they're not high metrics. They're not high volume. That's the problem. Like we could see, like, oh my god, he's shooting like this from 3. We definitely need to jack up his threes. No. Volume and understanding competition. We weren't really playing him full out last year. We were letting him dip his feet in, try to work his stuff more in the locker room. Like I said, this stuff is more important. So his play on the court, this was less determinative, but we want to see some of the mechanics of his passing and different things he could do, right? So let's continue on to the second sheet. Even though this is getting long, I want to really hammer down and maybe go a little bit longer. We'll see. So now we have the second set of skills in another sheet here. We're going to go over some of the first stuff. Let's get right into it. It's already getting too long here, right? So versatility, forward positions. He kind of showed ability in the small forward and power forward position. I think he was more suited to the small forward position, and he was being played at power forward for mismatch advantages. But if you boil down what he was kind of both in a similar way of the small forward tends to have more passing ability than the power forward. So he's like a mix of both. So I gave it a light green. He wasn't really played in multiple positions, but I think he has the capability, and that's based on his statistics and the variations of his statistics and stuff and how he can play. I think if he was asked to play small forward and try to stretch his game out a little bit, he could to a point. So we'll give him a light green for that, right? So consistency, production of core skills. His core skills was defense and 2-point shots, right? Like converting twos. So consistency of his core skills were always kind of utilized a lot. We could see games played result, we could peek this a bit, but you could tell by the colors. You could tell he played a lot of solid minutes, a lot of games, for a long time, and his numbers were fairly consistent. Like the fact that he's playing so many games and so much minutes and doesn't have those detrimental kind of like personal fouls and turnovers kind of spike up based on time, he was consistent enough in those skills. There's like I said, there's so much vagueness and context that needs to be filled. So I'm making more a judgment call on these kind of things. This one's more of a straightforward one. Playoff depth experience, 9 first rounds and 1 second. So I'll go through it quick, I guess, here. He made the playoffs every year for the first 5 years in Philly. So first round, first round, first round, first round, and this was his only second round. So you could see how it switches now to a light green. So this is making it to the playoffs is mediocre blue in a sense. Getting to the second round, now you have light green experience, and you could probably tell next round is a darker color like this, and then finals and championship are colors like these, right? So playoff experience, he only knows how to go to a certain point, but he has a lot of experience in the time frame we're at right now. A first round kind of flirting with playoffs and being a first round team, and he's seen all the failures in 9. Okay, let's continue through and cycle through this though. So he didn't make the playoffs year 6 and year 7, so mark those off the 6 that he missed, right? So process years. And then Minnesota didn't make the playoffs. It wasn't there for the playoffs. But the Nets made the playoffs. So this year he did make the playoffs with the Nets, but he was less instrumental in their ride to the playoffs. And then year 9, they didn't make the playoffs. And then that's basically 3 of the non-playoff years right there. So all 3 of these in the years first round, first round, first round, and then Chicago years is the no playoffs. And obviously the Raptors first round. And I'll go back. I was actually remembering kind of as I was talking that one of the Philly years was no playoffs. I think it was 4th year, I'm pretty sure. Because he got tested in his 3rd year in the playoffs. They didn't make the playoffs in the 4th year in Philly, and then went to the second round in 5th year, I think. So 1 year in Philly didn't make the playoffs early, and then the 2 process years. So 3 out of these years was non-playoff years. The Nets blowing up was another year. So that's 4, and then 5 and 6. So you can see all the years he didn't make the playoffs, but a lot of years he did. And a lot of these stats go directly into that, right? So it's his playoff experience is tuned to where we're at right now. And when Masai feels like we're on the next level, he goes gets the guys that have been at that level. Like when we're going for a championship, he gets guys that have won a championship, have been to the finals, right? So right now, Thad is the guy, mentor guy we need to kind of get us over this next hump. These are the walls, the playoff walls. Winning a series, learning how to win a series is a key component in playoff experience. And I think he has a roadmap of a lot of the errors, and he can come in and kind of correct certain things right off the bat. And I think Chicago, the big issue was leadership, right? Leadership wasn't the main, your best players need to be leaders in a sense of like, that's how things happen in the locker room. guys look to the best players to learn things because they want to be the best, right? And if your best player isn't a great leader, then that creates tons of issues with pushing forward and making it to the mountaintop. So what we have here is like I just took out all the estimated kind of things and just weighed in on all the specific results stuff. And this kind of formulates his offensive games because it's easier to rate offense based on misses and makes and all this type of different stuff, right? And these are more quantitative like statistics and able to produce a more accurate frame of the player and what they've done. We've talked about his D, but this is kind of a really thorough breakdown of his offense and weighing in this bottom line here, games played results, games played against starts against minute average. So how many? Yeah, you can get the format, right? So 74 games played that year, 22 started, 21 minutes. So I gave it kind of a light greenish because it's 20 minutes, okay. Yeah, started 22 games, okay, you know what I mean? But then next year, obviously, you could see where gold level of play is played 75 games, a lot out of 82 games. So missed 7 games and it started 71 of them and played 34.4 minutes. Like you think running whoever like we do, Thad's been run like that for ages, and you can see in all his statistics really high numbers and stuff like that. We could go through the whole thing, but you can get it. This year there was only 66 games played. There was a shortened season, so this when there's kind of like a brackets like this, you know what I mean? Like this was bubble year and then the return year. So that they both have. This was the amount of games played by Chicago specifically because they didn't actually go to the bubble. So they only actually played 65 total games that year. And each team is different. It's stated like everywhere that some teams play more games that year based on the stoppage, right? So over his career, we could see that he played a lot of minutes in the process years, right? And then when he was on teams that were trying to make the playoffs, and then in his prime, actually making the playoffs and playing a lot of minutes, 81, 81 starts, 81 games. Like, this is ridiculous. So I gave it like the championship dark gold. Like, so that's a lot of, like, a lot. Volume is high on the gold level of what he's giving, right? Minutes wise, availability is the best availability, and it looks like Thad's been available for a lot of the years that he's played, no matter what's going on with his body. He seems to have played a lot of games every year. Even when he's a bench role, he's there every game, right? 82 games, even though he started one and they kind of were off him a bit more at that point, he still came in and played, right? And that's what the workman pro type, like even though you could see his role going up and down, he still continues to come and play and give the minutes and give the consistency of what he offers, his core skills, and continues to develop the things that need developing, as we can see from all this kind of stuff here regarding his offense and whatnot. We can see here that this was a bench role. So when we were talking about the golds earlier, now you have the proper context of the minute spread, right? You can understand that like these are his most playable when he was in his prime playable, and then you kind of see his role change, and then Spurs didn't play him at all, and he got a gold here. But you always have to look at how many minutes played and minute skewing, right? This is where the minute skew is at the bottom, and you can understand how much of all this he gave based on this final number. And then I broke down points results in a sense of what you should be looking for. It's not the most advanced thing, right? So volume wise, we the first number is how many threes he took, second number how many twos, how many field or free throws, determined how many points he possibly could have gotten, and then weigh that against the points that he did get. And then obviously take into account volume and balance, the shot balance, and where he's producing these points really matters. And looking at that, we could see this is more of a determination, a, a determination of mine based on that, what I just explained. So possible total points against points scored, and then I rate them based on accuracy, kind of balancing, right? Because if he's taking more threes, you know that you can't make all the threes. You can only realistically make probably about 40% tops, and then 35 is decent. So you look to aim to kind of boil that back down to what's a possible, realistic possible number, and you weigh that, right? And you weigh that balance against the points. And we could see how he did, right? First couple years wasn't really spectacular at scoring, became way more efficient at scoring when he was relied on, when he fixed his two game and really became dominant with the two game. You could see the correlation between scoring and years of what he did on the court. And this is where the key kind of ties in. I guess I'll talk about free throws. It wasn't there's things to touch on here, but I want to touch everything in kind of order and just kind of go do it like full out right now, right? The full thing. We kind of got a little bit of the tidbits here and there, but let's actually look completely at 15 years of results in one single page and kind of look at it year to year and kind of track what kind of role and Swiss Army knifing Thad was doing. Okay. And before we start off, obviously, these results are scaled to second forward mold. So these aren't the same numbers and the same greens that would be on a point guard sheet. This is me analyzing from the position and seeing what's capable in it, right? So let's continue on, right? So obviously we can start with down at the bottom and see. Yeah, we talked about his minutes that year, so not enough to go on. Like basically no shots, like 8 shots, 8 points. Okay, you know what I mean. His free throws were looking okay at that point. His twos, meh. You know what I mean. 3-pointer, non-existent, no passing. Right. So we could tell his role that year was mainly defense and cutting and getting the odd foul call, and he wasn't really making an impact point wise. So we go into the second year where he's kind of balanced out. He saw what he needed to work on. He came back with a better 3 ball, came back with a better 2 ball, came back with like able to hit his free throws at this point, and you can see his offense went green. And he played a lot of this light green, and that's pretty good. That's pretty good. If rolled in correctly, this should equal winning. Yes, there's one red there, but it's smaller volume, and he understands that's an aspect that he can't connect to the team properly unless he can receive the ball and give the ball in a similar manner, right? So third year, this is where they kind of decided on him. His 2-pointers, they're probably pushing him into different roles on different play sets, and he wasn't being shown to be effective against the main action defenders. His free throws went down a bit. I think that's morale and kind of how you're doing. It just kind of maybe it's shooting, but his 3 ball was still there. So passing, no. So if you're judging off, if this was the only stat line you had to judge off a player, I could understand the decision they made. But the guy was 20, what, 19, 20, 21. He was 21. And this is what you determine his future off of? Nah, nah, nah. Not fairly rolled. Started a billion games the year before. And then you like half the year you kind of come off him because he has like he has a problem getting to the next level. No, you work with the player. You pull him back, yes, pull back his time a little bit, but then you work on the aspects that need working on, and you don't go fully in one direction and stop doing certain things because that would limit the player. It's about seeing if he can adapt, right? Giving the proper information for that player to adapt and understand what factors create winning results, right? So assists, he understood he's starting to learn the NBA game more too. So it's a little bit of like realizing stuff, right? Maybe he's also rolled down because he's on the bench now, right? So bench roll starts to make way when he's appropriately rolled against the people he should be fighting against. He starts to make development there, right? And development in his twos, right? Three ball, they shut that off. They didn't like what they saw, or it started off bad, or he's now really focusing on the post and he's more effective in that post. You can see that, right? Free throws, meh. But his efficiency and the way he gets his points was better this year. Even though some of these results look wanky, when it boils down to the end result, the 12 points he got were fairly efficient among league standards, right? So let's go on to the next year, year 5, when they actually made the second round, right? And we could see that he was very productive off the bench. Triple green, right? Light green, that's a bench volume, but efficiency in his role. And you could tell bench roll, but upped his minutes a little bit, so they are closer to 30 minutes, like a starter level kind of minutes skew, right? You could see that even though he's not starting every game, he's playing like a starter. So he still gets dark green here for the upped starter, like he's playing starter minutes, but he's coming off the bench, right? So that's what that means, right? So then we go into the process year. You can see that he was there's a piece in getting to the second round and fairly decent at that point, right? So then they go full process mode and he's given more reins and you're going to see his volume jack up a bit. And we could see at that time his two ball was decent enough at that point and he mained on his two ball and he was showing decent efficiency there. His assist to turnover ratio started to spike in a positive direction, and that was part of being asked to be a larger banana against better defense and learning and cutting his teeth against like the position he was in, right? So he worked on it as a bench guy, and then now you try to escalate the passing up properly, and you'll see the returns in volume increase, but still see the similar results. Like this, obviously, outlier in a sense of where he was learning, but you could see what happens when you convert from a bench roll passing to a starter passer, and he's actually gotten better, right? So, but let's look at the rest of the stuff here, right? So, volume 3 out. Yeah, let's continue with the 6th year to make it clean up, but you could tell what's going on here, right? Process. They're mainlining him more and more because there's no one playing in front of him, pretty much, right? So, a lot of, and then he goes like championship, 34 minutes played, 79 games played, 78 games started in an 82 game season. He didn't start 4 games and played 35 minutes in every game. This is hard hat mentality at its like utmost. A guy that is that available. It's based on the pro mentality and what he builds as a sportsman. He wants to be there. He understands being there is 50% of the battle half of the time, right? So we'll go on to Minnesota, the first kind of year flip. We kind of dived into that little thing a little bit, but let's correlate. This is, I don't know, this is weird. It looks like a guy that got injured and then his like 2-pointers changed and just never came back. Cause like he's showing, look, that's not bad. His first, like it looks like a guy that got injured to me, and then he changed the form of his shot or something. Like his shot form's already jacked up as it is, right? So I don't. This is where, in his prime, he needed to be able to hit these shots in the playoffs, because this is where it really matters. The free throws matter in the playoffs. That's where they really truly matter, and executing and being able to convert when the other team makes a mistake is key in playoff basketball. So let's continue on though. So we could see his points were inefficient, but his passing was. So he was creating a lot more points than he was scoring himself and not really converting on his own. And we could see how the balance skewed out of control. His 2-pointers and his free throws and his 3-point were off, but passing was on a next level. So that was like a really down year, obviously. Maybe he wasn't being utilized properly or something with the team rolled up too high. You know what I mean? Like, but still played every game. Still started 33 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, he played. So we go on to Brooklyn. We could see where that kind of reversed a bit, where they took down his shots in the 2 range and he became more efficient. But he was still playing a starter role and barely had time to adjust. But his 2 points were back a bit, hitting some threes. Playmaking wasn't there. He's probably focusing on scoring them a little bit more. Free throws, they're still sliding off a cliff. So the year that Brooklyn kind of started fully converting out, his playmaking was okay under that coach, still not where it was when he was properly understood as a playmaker and probably playing a different role. And we could see 3-pointers were turned off once his 2-game got turned up. So free throws off, but he mainly dieted on these 2 points. So he was fairly efficient for the shots he got, right? And then golden minutes played, 32 games played, 32 games started, 33 minutes. Ridiculous, right? So let's go on. First year in Indy when he was under a better coach and in his prime now. Nice solid green. Free throws went away, but you could see it's a pure kind of balance in a sense of the role he played. He was rolled in properly, probably as like a 4th offensive option on the starting lineup because he started. But with Paul George and other players at that time, he was less keyed in on and he was able to be more effective. And this is actually, when he's not mainlining, this is decent, right? So let's look at the second year. They tried to roll him up a little bit more. Playmaking came through. 2-ball kind of dipped, or 3-ball kind of dipped. 2-ball kind of dipped a bit. Free throws just keep sliding in a sense, but still mainly efficient, we could see. And this is a kind of separate result from the points, so what he can create for others. So assists are either what, 2 or 3s. So he's making points directly here, right? So we can understand the points that are being made from him directly from his key involvement, but we don't understand the hockey passes and all those type of things. So adding the extra context does really matter, but we can get a decent overview of what Thad has to offer regarding his experience and how effective he was and how much we want to actually take from the effective parts of him, right? So we'll continue on. So Indy really was an interesting when they rolled him up. Okay, and then he went ballistic mode. 81 games played, 81 games started, played 32 minutes game. And remember all his defensive stuff? So he's playing defense for a lot of minutes per game. And he's able to be functional and still capable, right? So that's a good player in a sense of all this red, and if you want to point to this and be like, oh, he's terrible, and not see the rest of everything, you're going to miss the true picture of things. If you're only looking at certain statistics and make or break a certain player for you, you're not understanding the player's game. Look how the Swiss Army knife, how this kind of balance changes, but he's still effective when it changes, and it's determinative how effective he is in those offensive positions. Defensively, he's kind of shown results based on whatever role you put him in. He's going to be able to defend. You know what I mean? And that's his core skills. That's what it should be. But all this kind of stuff is really bonus if he wasn't seen as this at first, right? So understanding that and building this out in a shorter time frame is the key to kind of what we want to do with players and learning different attributes. Like we don't teach them all the bad stuff to get to the good parts. We cut that stuff out. So there's a lot of things that we don't that aren't going to necessarily work to anything, or how much effect they have on the player depending on their own game and how they play and how what fits logically into their game. We're not going to force a guy to go out of style to just put a piece mold in him. We're going to ask him to play in his capability, understand body metrics and body science and all that kind of different stuff. Kind of is the other prong of this kind of two-headed monster we're trying to create, in a sense of understanding the body science of these freak athletes and then relaying all this IQ information of built up knowledge from other mentors and boiling it down to the best stuff and continuing that process over and over and grandfathering a, an array of knowledge to every single generation of Raptor. And this is some of the stuff that Thad has offer to that bar and kind of is able to kind of add something to the players so they're able to lift that bar later on in their careers when they're main stars. So it's important in the early years to really have key mentors that understand the game and play properly. And we could see based on his volumes and all that stuff, he completely changed his game based on the team, what the team needed, right? So let's look at the last year in Indy. We could see, okay, great playmaking for Sabonis and Oladipo. Yeah. His 3-ball was decent. His 2-ball was decent. But his free throws were trash. And his 2-ball wasn't hard, like scaled up enough to keep him in this kind of zone. So it kind of fell off a bit based on volume, and he was creating more than he was scoring at that point, clearly. But he played a lot of minutes and started every game. So we can understand he's rolled up too high here in a sense of where he's being asked to score. And this is kind of where his kind of prime kind of ends and he kind of flips over. So let's see what it looks like in his mentor years. We could see as a bench role now for Chicago. More of a mentor, efficient in his points, free throws, trash. Yeah. 2 points, volume's not too high, but 501, okay. 3-pointers are up. We could see when he's early with teams till he figures out how they work inside and where his best role is. He tends to have poor 2 results and then jacked up 2 results and turns off the 3, but has good 3 results in the first year. It's weird. I it's so weird. I've never really seen that really hard. But that's what we're going through with. That is an interesting guy, and I think there was a lot of stuff here and there to really explain and kind of go into more context about the NBA game and everything about it, right? So let's continue on. We could see that his offense is back greenish. Yeah, okay, because his three balls, the volume on his three ball is way higher. It's at where we thought it could be. This was probably where if he was had the proper time, he could have had this at this point. If he condensed this blue, maybe a red or a light green in between here and scaled up into here, right? And had this stuff and this stuff and this stuff, right? This, if you chop this out and replace it here and boil down all this into sum it up and get him here at this point, he would have been a great prime player, man. Holy jeez, with a volume rate of that, he would have been a force to be reckoned with. Like, catch the ball, defenders gonna have to come right up on him to guard him and not let him get off a nice clean 3. He's just gonna use that to get a first step blow by and take it thunderously to the rim. And if they collapse the D, he's gonna pass out to an open shooter, bing, cash money. And that's how, like, that's what I read from all this, like the kind of style based on knowing him in these years. But okay, let's go on to his golden kind of bench here, where you could see that he didn't start too many games. His minutes were still kind of high, not touching 30, so we're cooling down the green, right? Because it's not the same level. I think 25 minutes is the kind of starter, like, bench kind of next point down. So if you're under 25, you're definitely more of like a bench guy, right? So we'll look at his scoring efficiency. Okay, I give it like a vet thing because his vet balance, like, this isn't enough points to really make a determination, but we can use this to balance and understand what he's doing here. And these tell me that he's in vet mode right now. Free throws obviously mediocre to bad most of his prime years, which really you could see really inhibited him from maybe going dark green in these years and really being a more key offensive force for Indiana, right? And he did play the minutes. It wasn't about time or anything. It was about building in these years to build that foundation out more, have a better 3 ball, have something happened here. I have no clue. This is so weird how a guy just completely just drops completely off at free throws. I think it was a shoulder injury, motion mechanics, or something like that, man. Frig, who knows? But let's continue on. So we could see for a bench guy, these are great statistical numbers, and there's something in there. There's something in there for us to, because when his athleticism is gone, this is the stuff that we want, the IQ stuff. Build the player up from the start with this, and when they're at this point, this thing is like dark, like champion. You know what I mean? That's the way that we want to kind of do it. You want to try to invest and kind of shrink this part down. So when they're kind of motioning into their prime, they're really defining out and becoming this color. So when they're in their prime, they're maxed out official version, not betas and alphas. See, this is where he got punched down from official version, and then the 3 ball, he doesn't really have it where the volume needs to be, so he gets punched down another 2 from alpha to beta now. And we can see everything that encompassed his kind of journey here. But let's end it off with his final year. San Antonio, look at what that looks like. So IQ passing still there. Still got, he can IQ the hell out of rookies and whoever he needs to now because he's got like an elite IQ level on body positioning in the post. But his effectiveness, obviously, his minutes, and you can understand how that skews out. Not enough free throws, not enough time to get any free throws, really not being played. And then for us, we can look at what he did for us. So, yeah, high positive on low volume, high positive on low volume. Eh, we, based on our system, he wasn't getting inside help a lot in a sense of he's being forced into that uncomfortable position he usually is when he's converting to a team like we saw in this year, right? And then like we've saw the trends. He relies on the 3 ball the first year when he figures out the 2 game, and then he goes gold the next year, right? So obviously free throws still horrendous. Efficiency, vet, not enough shots to really equate. Look, 5 shots pretty much with 1 free throw. Meh. Like, and then vet minutes, kind of 60, 18 minutes played, and he got more of an opportunity to play against other people. So let's boil down to who gets what from Thad now, and I'm gonna bridge that kind of deep statistic bridge that I didn't add context to, but I hopefully explained all this out enough where you can really see how much knowledge and different variation knowledge that Thad has through his 15 years. He's really been in like every scenario, every role, relied on every different skill at one point, and has a lot to give as a mentor to our young guys about so they don't have to roll through the pains of all this and kind of get onto the faster green track. And we could see it goes up and down as players move through the years and switch teams and switch roles. But there are things that continuously show trend, like the way he learned how to pass, his 2 ball is really key and elite in a sense of efficiency for what level competition he was playing with in a sense of playoff teams. And then, yeah, you understand. We went over scoring efficiency. He was better in his earlier prime years and then asked to really complement Paul George in his prime. So his offense efficiency is different, but he does have a lot of mainline knowledge for Scotty to kind of learn off of and what kind of worked and what didn't and all this kind of stuff, right? And he played a lot of minutes, a a lot of years, a lot of stuff, a lot of experience, man, playing the game. And now we're gonna go on to that part where I've kind of listed out everyone and what skills I think they can learn. Okay, this is getting really long, so I'm gonna have to kind of like speed through this part. OG, I think, is getting the most, so I put him at the top. Interior passing, we talked about 0 to 10 feet, 2-point shooting, IQ, and form because OG needs form work still on his kind of like stand-up 2-point shooting, and the IQ bodying, like how to use his body in the post the way Thad does to really get great kind of opportunities at the basket, leadership core skills to become like a mainstay leader, like really teach him how to really become one of those guys that really pushes and drives and helps lead guys, right? So I'm not going to go over the code. It would take too long. So Scotty Barnes, uh, premature coding, everything up, plus all the failed skill lessons that Thad has of what he didn't work early and what he needed to work early to be able to be the best player that he could. And Scotty has someone to really listen to of like, hey man, I wish I did this or I wish I did that. And Scotty's smart enough to understand and pick that up. High prospect expectations because a lot of our guys aren't high prospect expectations. There's going to be a pull and tug with the fans, and I think Thad really understands that, being a high pick himself, and kind of can help guide Scotty a little bit better than anyone else because him understanding what that entailed and working with other high picks through the years and what their kind of process has been, he's really kind of has that to offer, right? And then forward defense IQ, and an OB already has that for himself. But Scotty can maybe pick up some stuff. Like it's a web. Like OG's teaching Scotty, but then also Thad's teaching Scotty some stuff too. And then Scotty's going to be like a morphosis of both guys, right? So let's go on to this is supposed to say Kanono. I wanted to kind of bust out some cool nicknames, but that's or his code. Interior passing 0 to 10 feet, 2-point shooting IQ. I think form, he's not the same body as Thad, so his form's going to be different and going to need a different molding type style of motion cameras and looking at different guys that are way more taller and have efficiency shooting in that area. So IQ wise though, learning when to take shots and different bodying positions, he can learn from Thad. But you could tell a trend. These are all like forwards. He's teaching a lot of four different skills, and then everything off the court, like preparation, all that kind of stuff we went into, hard hat mentality, everything like that, right? So MVP skills, our guy, official version. O is a fish, positive leadership skills, because I think it's interesting. We've had a bunch of different guys, but someone that could really enhance Spicy's ability to kind of lead in a positive way, because that has been that his whole career, and he can kind of help him tweak his kind of leadership style. Like older players, you bring in another vet might learn a couple things, tweak their game, but you're not looking to build everything in a sense of what they need. So there's going to be limited effect, and each player is different. They're not going to be able to translate everything Thad has. The results are varied. They're very varied based on tweaking, and there's a lot of inside stuff I don't even know. I'm just looking at the results and trying to give the truth of the results. And let's continue on. So other tweaks like that. And then court IQ things like passing and defense, different play sets and understanding how to defend certain types of guys and certain types of interior passes and stuff like that he can help him with. He's not going to really take too much from Thad because he's a way better player than Thad, but Thad can enhance aspects to his game. So you can't think like, oh, just because a player is not the same skill, he has nothing to learn from him. There are aspects. Everyone is good at their own thing in a sense, and the guys that can really talk to everyone and learn what that is and really take that information in really develop out like P skills and MVP skills. We thought it was silly himself naming himself P skills, but man, he's got the MVP skills, in my opinion. And then another interesting, I'm trying this one, and this is fresh. So, Precious Achua, Achu Beast Mode kind of style. Like, so at you, but for Achua, Achu Beast Mode. I don't know. I'm playing with something, whatever. It's funny. But he has a split code mode. He's the third center, second forward mold, third type. Like it's he's a really interesting and confusing player at the same, but everything Thad has to offer, he could utilize in his game. And now for like a team direction kind of stuff, what he has to offer as a leader, in a sense, actually leading us at this current time and not just trying to copy skills off him or learn pass down skills. Roadmap, team direction. We talked about the roadmap. 8 years of first round playoff losses and every issue team wise. Like he must know every type of issue there was that stopped the team from making it to the second round because he made it once, understood what it took, and he could see where the failures were. And he's not the type of talent to completely change a team's direction, but he can help kind of steer the ship. He's a strong oar, in a sense, on a Viking boat. He's not the Spicy P where Spicy P's manning like 4 different oars by himself, right? So it's really interesting, all that locker room mentality. Obviously, right now, really positive kind of developing mindset kind of guy, really vet stable force in the locker room with the ups and downs and the losses and understanding, hey guys, we're a great team. I've been on bad teams. I know this team is good. We just have to continue to focus and work on the things we need to work on. And I'll leave it off there. This is just a couple tidbits. He teaches everyone on the roster so many things, but things that will come up later on, I just wanted to kind of lay down a little bit because I will be doing all these molds for sure. And housekeeping quickly. Okay, so I want to quickly thank and salute the real ones for liking, commenting, subscribing, giving me feedback, all that kind of stuff. Really, really fuels the passion here. And I want to thank Raptors Freak Lex, always doing Raptors stream 9:30 a.m. Eastern. Great time, everyone's talking and therapeuting, ther therapeutically going through things, and really trying to keep a positive tone and look for the positive, even in losses, right? But I want to explain this thumbnail, but it's already too long. I will not touch an hour and 50 minutes. So this is it. We worked for it, the results, and I want to do more of this. And obviously, this is the first one. It took a longer to explain, but I think I can fast track to the more important points next time. And this was just a base model of seeing it all of the context available and understanding the process with that will help me fast track the process with some of these guys when I do their mentor files, because now they're kind of mentors in the league like JV, and that's where I wanted to connect this, but I'll explain it next video. This one's been long but good. Salute, real ones, Project Truth always, Logical Raptors, Fanatic out. Mike G, mic drop.